Good morning. My name is Reverend Theresa Soto, and I am the lead minister here at the First Unitarian Church of Oakland. We want to welcome you this morning to worship, and I want to let folks know that for most of the service, we'll ask you to keep your camera off so that people can follow along with the words on the screen. And we're recording the service. It'll be on our YouTube channel. So if you would prefer not to be in the recording, we ask you to keep your camera off for that as well. Thank you and welcome here today.
We are an intentionally multi-generational, multiracial, multicultural, inclusive, and anti-oppressive religious community. And you are welcome here. I'm Mary Lane, a member of the Board of Trustees. Here with me are Pastor Theresa, Alex Haider-Winnett, Dan Wright, our worship producer, Vincent Rains, and others. We invite you to fill out the guest connection card you will see in the chat. We want to be able to support your exploration of what's available in our community that interests you and how you might participate. Welcome.
Now we'll be lighting the chalice and the Black Lives Matter candle. So in just a moment, those words will show up on the screen. We light this chalice, symbol of Unitarian Universalism. May it remind us of the divine spark in all of creation, the power of love to heal what is broken, and to be grateful for life's blessings each day. And now, the Black Lives Matter candle. We light this candle in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement and work for the day in which Black lives are treated equitably with dignity and justice. Now, I want to thank Dan Wright for the reading he's about to bring. Thank you, Dan.
This reading is called A House Called Tomorrow. It's by Alberto Rios. You are not 15 or 12 or 17. You are 100 wild centuries and 15. Bringing with you in every breath and in every step everyone who has come before you, all the yous that you have been, the mothers of your mother, the fathers of your father. If someone in your family tree was trouble, 100 were not. The bad do not win, not finally, no matter how loud they are. We simply would not be here if it were so. You are made fundamentally from the good. With this knowledge, you never march alone. You are the breaking news of the century. You are the good who has come forward through it all, even if so many days feel otherwise. But think, when you as a child learned to speak, it's not that you didn't know words. It's that from the centuries, you knew so many. And it's hard to choose the words that will be your own. From those centuries, we human beings bring with us the simple solutions and songs, the river bridges and star charts and song harmonies, all in service to a simple idea that we can make a house called tomorrow. What we bring finally into the new day every day is ourselves. And that's all we need to start. That's everything we require to keep going. Look back only for as long as you must. Then Go forward into the history you will make. Be good, then better. Write books, cure disease, make us proud. Make yourself proud. And those who came before you, when you hear thunder, hear it as their applause.
Indeed, we will hear it as their applause. Thank you. Now's the time in our service when we go ahead and unmute our microphones and give each other good morning greetings. Let's do that now.
Wow.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Jody.
Hi, everybody.
Morning.
Morning,
Morning,
Marcy.
everybody. Hello.
I'm
Good
Marcy.
to see all of
Good
you.
morning.
Good morning.
Good
Good
to
morning,
be here.
everybody.
Good morning.
Great to see
Hi,
you.
Marilyn.
Oh,
Hi,
hi,
Carol.
Tara.
Hi, Emily. Hi, Greg.
Hi,
Carol.
Good
Good to see you,
my
Ingrid.
friends.
Marcy.
Kathy. Good morning, Hi, Evelyn. And Amy.
Linda.
Hello, my
Marcy and Emily and Greg.
Hi, Helen. Evelyn. Hi,
Donna. George.
Oh.
Hi, Tom and Carol.
Hey, Amy.
See.
Oh, friends, it's so good to see all of you.
Linda.
I'm going to
Oh, Sherry.
Go.
mute and turn off your video for a bit. There will be opportunities to check in together, I'm sure. But it is good to be with all of you today. My name is Alex Haider-Winnett. I am your Interim Director of Religious Education, and I am glad to have you today at worship. Right now is our time for all ages, our wisdom story, the time that we set aside to remember that there are people of many ages and abilities and backgrounds worshiping together. So as your interim director of religious education, I'm in charge of a lot of things, but one of it is to remind us to be young at heart and to open our hearts to the things that we are learning together. And as I've been doing that, I've been thinking a lot about this children's rhyme. You may remember it. It's got finger gestures. It's here is the church, here is the steeple, open the doors and see all the people. You may remember that. You may know how to do that. It may be harder with arthritic fingers or with reduced abilities, but here are our people inside the church. And I've been thinking a lot about this rhyme because it really puts the building first. The church, the steeple, the doors, and then the people feel like an afterthought. And the thing is, I've been to a lot of beautiful buildings, a lot of beautiful church buildings, amazing cathedrals made of stone and simple Quaker meeting houses and gorgeous New England Unitarian churches and simple house churches. I've worshiped among the trees, watching the bats fly as the moon rises. There's a lot of places to worship, but what makes church feel like church for me is the people. All of you, the community that we build together, the opportunities to do the work of the people together. So I'm working on a new way of thinking about our church, new gestures. And I haven't made it rhyme yet, I'm afraid. It's not one of my fortes, but I invite you to join me in this, that church is learning and teaching together. Now, I know your camera's off, but I invite you to join me in these gestures. Church is learning and teaching together. And church is praying together. Church is praying together. Church is announcing that a new world is possible. Church is announcing that a new world is possible. Church is loving one another. So we reach out and we hug. The church is loving one another. And church is serving and caring. Church is serving and caring. So church is learning and teaching together. Church is praying together. Church is announcing that a new world is possible. Church is loving and caring one another. And church is serving together. So I hope we can keep these in mind as we move forward through the service and through our workshop later this morning, and for all the things that we do together. So I'm going to invite you to settle in and receive our next song. This is an old song that we sing frequently, so you may wish to join along if you know the words or have a hymnal. It is called Let's Build a Land. Now, it is a complicated song in some ways. The language, the imagery, the words are from the Old Testament prophets, a story of liberation and overturning corrupt government systems. But these words have also been used to justify colonization, the Western expansion of the United States, occupation of native lands both here and abroad. And therefore, these words are made complicated and all the more complicated in their beauty. And so I invite you to sit with that, knowing that some people hear this language, this song, as a call for a greater world. And some people hear this song as a call for occupation, and both are true. And we can sit with that complication and appreciate the difficulties of making our world together and building a world together. So this version, this rendition is from our chancel choir, and I invite you to listen and or sing along as you feel called.
Today, I want to start by sharing with you some of what I do for a living. Part of my job is to design new computer programs. I facilitate meetings where various stakeholders, marketing, scientists, engineers, product managers, end users, explain their business needs and priorities, as well as seemingly endless technical details. I'm successful, I think, because I listen and ask questions without judgment until I understand each person's point of view. I can then see where people are talking at cross purposes. I uncover and correct their mistaken assumptions during discussion. I bring consensus to the group on a solution, putting aside my desire to dictate a solution. Because then everyone in the group is invested, committed, and accountable to the implementation. I think it's much harder to do that in my personal life. I naturally process everything I hear through my existing understanding. I'm sure we're built like that by design. It's an evolutionary adaptation that, along with the fight or flight response, helps ensure survival. But this unconscious filtering has its downsides. For one thing, it reinforces my belief that I have everything figured out. What happens when I hear someone share an experience or idea that doesn't fit my existing beliefs? I could respond, "I don't believe you," completely alienating and hurting the other person. While it may be true that I don't believe that person, I think the most honest response is to simply say, "I don't understand what you've shared. It's totally outside my experience." The loving response is to be curious. With the humility and imagination to recognize those things that don't fit my understanding, I can be curious rather than skeptical. I'd like to read a passage about the concept of no mind from the Buddhism.org website. We call those who live in the world of torment and delusion sentient beings. And a Buddha is one who has completely transcended such a world. That delusion-free state, the state of supreme enlightenment, is called no mind. Think of delusions as dust and no mind as the natural state of the mirror. That state, a spotless mirror, is Buddha nature, fundamental nature, original face. If you dust off the mirror, you have this natural state. First, we have the conscious delusions, a variety of thoughts rising. Secondly, we have the unconscious delusions, which include even the tiniest of delusions hidden deep within the subconscious. While discussing with the Reverend Dr. Jennifer Kwong, my upcoming board service a while ago, discussing it as spiritual practice, he suggested to me the concept of holy curiosity. That idea has stuck with me because for me, it goes to the heart of how my personal relationships are tied to my concept of God, of ethical living, and how I want to live out my principles. It helps me see, for instance, people exhibiting leadership when it's not a leadership style that I'm used to. It helps me to avoid making inappropriate comments that come from mistaken assumptions about another person. My own concept of God is the commitment and the acts of love that create a beloved community. But I believe it's more than what we do that makes beloved community possible. It's each individual's commitment to this journey of transformation, which allows us to better see, understand, and ultimately love one another. To treat each one not as I want to be treated, but as they want to be treated.
Now, I invite Alex to lead us in prayer.
Spirit of love, life, and justice, you who go by many names, we acknowledge the love that binds us even as we are apart. We give thanks for this day, this opportunity to worship together as a community through the power of technology. Until we are able to gather again, we are grateful to be apart. We give thanks for this beautiful day, this late winter, early spring day of sunshine and rain, of blooming blossoms and returning birds, as the earth slowly returns to life. We lift up our politicians, our government, that they work for justice, peace, equality, equity, and love. We lift up those in our community who are ailing, those who we have lost, those who are struggling and grieving, as well as those who are celebrating and rejoicing together for the complications of life. We bring our mind to those who are struggling for justice, people at the border working to reunite families, those working for environmental and economic justice. May their victories be swift. May they continue to fight with our principles and passions. Let us join in a moment of stillness to lift up our own prayers. For all these prayers spoken and those that remain in the silent sanctuary of our hearts, for the people, places, and events that weave us together in a tapestry of love we call community. Amen. Ashe, and blessed be. Friends, I'd like to remind you of a few things happening in our beloved community. There are still lots of wonderful opportunities to be together even while we are apart. I'd like to remind you and or invite you to join us immediately after the service for a workshop on interim religious education, taking a look at where we've been and where we are now. Also, check out your weekly Chalice Chatter to be informed about upcoming events. I'd like to thank everyone who continues the good work of organizing the work of our people, even while we are apart. There is a regional assembly occurring next month in February. Of course, it is online. So check your Chalice Chatter for how to register for regional assembly. Lots of good work done within our larger spiritual community. And as I mentioned, we are going to be moving immediately into the workshop, but we will have Chalice Chatter. So we're going to drop a link in, or coffee hour, a link into the chat if you would rather attend coffee hour rather than the workshop. But we really hope that you do join the workshop today. So for all the work that we do together, we give thanks. But that was a scene from the stage production of David Byrne's American Utopia. Byrne, the musician, artist, activist, former frontman for one of my favorite bands, Talking Heads, ended his Broadway production every night with the song Hell You Tom Bout by Janelle Monáe. As he explained in the clip, this song is both a protest song and a requiem, a lamentation for the countless number of Black folks who have been killed in this country through lynching and or police violence. As Byrne and his band of international percussionists name each of the victims, director Spike Lee intersperses photos of the people being named, sometimes accompanied by their surviving family members. It is a jarring experience. I imagine what it would have been like to be in that crowd. To have experienced an hour and a half of rock songs. Seeing one of my favorite musicians, probably after spending a lot of money to see it, only to have brought into a church service, memorializing the victims of systemic racism and violence. One of the things that sticks out to me rewatching that scene is seeing two members of the band, both Black women, coaxing the audience to participate in the chant. They are inviting at first, and then is insistent. We don't get to just witness this. We don't get to just watch. This is our work to do. When we name the names of the dead, we are bringing them among us. And we are to sit with our own complicity in the system of violence. There are no spectators in the work for justice. It is both deeply distressing and comforting to experience and to participate in, to be part of this action. I share David Byrne's hesitancy in loving the song, and I am lightened by knowing that Janelle Monáe wrote this song for everyone. This is a time of both comforting and discomforting. And this is what we are doing in religious education. More than just Sunday school, more than catechism, religious education is an opportunity of people of all ages to develop into imaginative, theological, spiritual people. Religious education is where we discern our values, our hopes, our dreams for ourselves and each other. It is making meaning of the world around us. It allows us to develop our skills as leaders in our communities, speak truth to power even when that power resides within ourselves, and to speak with moral and ethical grounding. And this work is both comforting and discomforting. The religious educator Maria Harris states that the church is the curriculum. The work of the people is always to be done in formation as a spiritual community, whether it is in worship, coffee hour, in committee work, or socializing. We are constantly in a state of learning and growing as both individuals and a collective community. We are learning and growing. We are doing spiritual formation, theological reflection, leadership development, growing interpersonally to find new ways of liberating ourselves and each other. Whether we like it or not, church is a religious education, not something that we reserve for children and youth. It is not something that requires a critical mass. It does not require complicated lesson plans. Rather, religious education is what I call Monday through Sunday school. There is a lot to say about religious education in general and at UU Oakland in specific. As your interim DRE, I've spent the last few months getting to know you, learning your history and heritage, connecting you with our larger community of faith, and helping discern your needs for leadership. Although I have been a member here for almost a decade, it is different to be here on this side of the community, to serve as your director of religious education. And so here is what I have learned so far. Are you ready? You are doing a good job. You are already doing a good job. You, my friends at the First Unitarian Church of Oakland, you are an earnest people. You value education and justice. Your hearts have been broken and you are grieving, but you are also resilient. You are facing the challenges of our time with courage and tenderness, and you are struggling to see where you are. I know that this year feels like an anomaly in the life of the church. Maybe it feels like a pause or like you're in a holding pattern. But I am here to tell you that religious education has been and continues to be happening while you are busy making plans. You don't have to wait for it to start. It already started long before you got here. Every day that we get up and face the day with courage, resilience, and a willingness to make meaning of this wild, confusing, mixed up, and broken world is a day where you are engaging in religious education. Whether you are a child, a young adult, middle-aged, or an elder, whether you are raising children, your children are grown, or if you've never been a caretaker of a young person, you are part of the religious education program here at UU Oakland. I have seen you do religious education in the sanctuary, in the classrooms, and in the city streets. I have seen you do religious education over the dinner table, at the potluck, and while having difficult conversations about race, class, and oppression. When we have cried together and held each other in times of crisis and sorrow, while we have spoken difficult truths with courage and conviction, while we have sat quietly, uncertain what to say next. This is the work of the church and one we do together. Now, maybe you have heard recently in the news about the Grammy Awards for Best Children's Album. And then again, maybe you haven't. Unless you are a teacher or have small children at home, it may not have been a story to pop up on your radar. But this is what happened. Last month, the Grammy nominations were released. And it just so happened that all of the people nominated for Best Children's Album were all white. And all but one of them were men. In a field as diverse and widespread as children's music, the committee thought to fill the nominations primarily with white men. Now, the story could have easily been ignored by the media and public. After all, who really thinks about children's music? But then something kind of remarkable happened. 3 of the nominees, the Okie Dokie Brothers, Doggone Fleas, and Alistair Mook, all rescinded their nominations. All the groups thanked the Grammys and said they were not interested in participating in an all-white slate. Not now, not in 2021. So the governing board sat down with the 3 artists, as well as a few other artists of color, and came to an understanding of the importance of diversity, especially in art aimed toward children and families. The governing committee agreed to do better and rewrote the rules to ensure identity and historically marginalized communities were represented in the category in the future. Now, I believe it is noteworthy that one of the artists in question, Alistair Mook, is a longtime member of a UU congregation in Boston. And his album that was nominated is entitled Be a Pain, an album for young leaders. Now, I mention this not to pat ourselves on the back. Heaven knows that we have much to do and are still quite prone to making mistakes. But I think there is a beautiful sign that a UU religious educator, inspiring kids and families to be brave and work for justice, did just that. It must have been difficult to turn down that nomination. In an interview with NPR, Mook said that he would love to get a Grammy, but, quote, I don't want it like this, where the playing field's not even. In the interview, Mook and the Okie Dokie Brothers name other musicians, people of color and immigrants, people like Pierce Freelon, Uno Dos Tres Andreas, and the R&B group Shine and the Moonbeams. People who aren't just, quote, white guys with the guitars, as the Okie Dokie Brothers call themselves. People of color and immigrants just as deserving of a Grammy nomination. Now, this is what I am hoping we are doing in our religious education here at UU Oakland. I hope we are lifting people up. I hope we are doing the work of recognizing our own place in the world, learning how to wield our power and privilege for the good of our communities. I hope we are learning how to be ancestors for the coming generations, that we are practicing how to notice and how to be brave and resilient enough to respond to it in a principled way. Now, if we're not doing that, what are we even doing here? So immediately following the service, Reverend Theresa and I invite you to join us for a workshop on religious education here at UU Oakland. We will dive deeper into what you as a community think of religious education, and we will be pulling out the figurative map to determine where we have been and how you got where you are now. And then in the coming weeks, we will continue to talk about what religious education is and can be, and where you want to be in 5, 10, 20, even 50 years from now. I hope you will join us. So let me say that as your interim religious educator, it is a joy to serve you and to work alongside of you. I'm here to guide and coach you, to cheer you on and push you back when appropriate. After all, this is not my work to do. It is yours. And together we will labor to create something that fits your needs and serve your community well. And in the meantime, there are songs to be sung. There are names we will say with tears in our eyes and our hearts beating like drums. We will learn how to recognize prophets in our midst. We will make room for new voices, and we will learn, grow, and try again together. May it be so. Amen. Ashe. And blessed be. And for our reflective song, I invite you to listen, and as you learn it, sing along to Be a Pain by Alistair Mook, one of those artists who rescinded their Grammy nomination.
If you see something that's wrong, raise your hand and say that's wrong. Point it out and name that thing by its name. Don't stand by and stare. If it's wrong, it's your affair. Don't be quiet, make a riot. Be a pain. Be a pain, shout about it and complain. Ignore the crowd and go against the grain. Don't be polite, raise your voice and do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain. When Rosa Parks sat on that bus, she chose to make a fuss. She chose to break the rules and take the blame. Her choice to sit and fight helped to bring on civil rights, because one strong woman chose to be a pain. Be a pain, shout about it and complain. If they say you have to move, say I'll remain. Don't be polite, raise your voice and do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain. Harvey Milk, chose to run for the council board and won, even though folks said you can't because you're gay. One brave LGBTQ elected leader ran and knew you can change things if you choose to be a pain. Be a pain, shout about it and complain. Tell them I won't let you make me feel ashamed. Don't be polite, raise your voice and do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain. Tennis star named Billie Jean told the world she had a dream that men and women would be paid the same. She refused to hit that ball till there was equal pay for all. She was a king because she was a royal pain. Be a pain, shout about it and complain. If they refuse to pay, refuse to play the game. Don't be polite, raise your voice and do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain. Kids from Parkland led the fight for something they all knew was right. They said it's time for us to finally make a change. If adults can't compromise, we must go march for our lives. They spoke out and led the charge. They all were pains. Be a pain, shout about it and complain. When you're faced with laws you know are just insane. Don't be polite, raise your voice and do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain. Oh, be a pain, shout about it and complain. Ignore the crowd and go against the grain. Don't be polite, raise your voice and do what's right. Be a pain, be a pain, be a pain.
I have to say that was a great song. This beloved community strives for, and at its best exhibits, some of my own deeply held values. Every one of the ways I've found to serve here at First Unitarian has been personally rewarding and sometimes has been deeply transformative. That's why I've remained steadfastly committed to its health throughout the 30 years I've been a member. And this includes its financial health. Yes, this is the sharing of responsibility. Please join me in supporting this church's financial health by giving what you can. To see ways to give, please click on the chat button to open the chat window. And if you've not yet made an ongoing financial commitment, please consider doing so. Now, if you will join me in saying the words of the congregational commitment, which have just appeared on my screen. To the work of the church, which is weaving a tapestry of love we call community, we dedicate ourselves and these, our offerings. And now I get to invite Stefan Schneider to lead us in song.
Today we're going to reprise Wa Ya Ya that we heard when we opened service this morning for our Sunday benediction. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, we are going. Heaven knows where we are going, but we know within. And we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know. And the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah. 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 Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
As we extinguish our chalice and our Black Lives Matter candle, I invite you to reach out with your hearts and mind. Reach out and make a connection to someone in our community. Friends, we are going. Heaven knows where we are going, but we know we will get there together.